patch management using Desktop Central. So here goes the agenda for today. So first is the overview. So what is patch management, how it works, and the product architecture as well as patch management architecture. Then I've taken a few scenarios to explain the features in a better way, like how to perform tests and deploying the patches to your production machines as well as test lab machines. Then completely automating the patch deployment on Desktop Central to your network machines. And a scenario where you have a case of 0-day critical patches to be deployed, how to achieve that. And then different scenarios and solutions which we came across based on our experience, followed by the questions at last. So if you have any questions or doubts, feel free to put in the chat section. I have expert panel sitting next to me who will be answering your questions then and there. And we're also going to collect all the questions raised during the presentation. I'm going to share towards the end of my training session. All right, so first of all, the supported operating system. So as of now, you can patch any Windows OS operating system machines as well as Apple Mac machines and Linux OS too. So in Linux, we support Ubuntu and Debian as of now. And Windows and Mac, all the operating systems are supported. We support overall more than 950 plus applications which can be patched across different heterogeneous network, which consists of maybe Windows, a Mac and Linux, as well as third-party application too. So we have support even more than 250 plus third-party apps, along with the regular Microsoft and Mac and Linux OS and application updates. All these can be patched using Desktop Central Patch Management. So for the customers who have joined my training session for the first time or who are new to the product, I'd like to first touch on the Desktop Central product architecture. So as you can see, you have Desktop Central Server installed in your head office, and you need to push the agents on all the machines which you wish to manage. Once agents are installed, it will contact the main server and check for any tasks and execute on the client machines. If you have any remote offices or branch offices to manage, then we recommend to have a distribution server in the remote site, which will help you in the bandwidth data replication as well as pushing the agents from the distribution servers. And if you have any mobile users, that means the guys who are working from home or traveling a lot, technically you can even manage them over the internet by doing NATing on your firewall. That's the architecture on Desktop Central product level. Then there are different set of ports used by Desktop Central. So we do support HTTP, HTTPS, as well as TCP ports. So these are different set of components involved in the product, and all of them uses the respective ports based on the functionality. If you want to know more on that, you can go to desktopcentral.com/ports to know more on it. The next I'd like to talk about is 90-minute refresh policy. Now you might wonder, what is this 90 minutes policy? So this is the agent server communication time interval wherein every 90 minutes our agent checks with the server for any task available for deployment. So let's imagine that you're managing somewhere around 900 computers and all of them contacting the central server at the same time, which might choke up your network bandwidth as well as it might impact your server CPU performance, which you don't really want. As a system admin, you don't want that to happen. So to handle the scenario, Desktop Central has this feature called 90 minutes policy, where it has the intelligence to distribute the agent server communication channel in a balanced manner. So in this case, on first minute, 10 computers are going to communicate to the server and take the job and execute. In next minute, the next set of 10 machines will communicate to the server and take the task and execute. And likewise, Within 90 minutes, all the 900 computers will communicate to the server and take the task and execute on the respective client machines. So this way, server ensures that the deployment is being processed within 90 minutes without impacting the network bandwidth or server performance in a balanced manner. So that is what the 90 minutes policy is all about. Next, I'd like to talk here is on the patch management architecture. So what happens in the patch management workflow in the back end? So you'll have a DesktopCentral server running in your local network, and we maintain an online patch database, which we call Patch Vulnerability DB. So this database contains all the information whenever any patches are released by Microsoft or the third-party vendors. They'll have the info like which patch came out on which date, what application they belong to, the download URL details, the cell and switches detection details, and all this info will be published in our central patch repository, which will be synchronized with your DesktopCentral server machine on periodic basis. And after that, you need to scan your client machines. Once the scanning is done, the patches are found as missing, and those patches, when you deploy the task, they will be going to the internet and downloading the patches from the respective vendor site to your main central server machine, and it will be pushed out to your local client machines. So that's how the workflow happens in the backend. All right, next comes the objective for the patch management. So I want to set up my patch management on using DesktopCentral, and what are the points it involves or I need to ensure. So I've listed out the objectives on that. So first and foremost is scan and test on non-production machines. So I need to ensure that the scanning is performed and we are testing those patches on my lab machines. Once the testing is completed, then I need to approve the patches based on the test results and then deploy those patches to the production machines. And once the production machine deployment is completed in a manual manner, then I have to automate the complete patch deployment on different stage by stage on periodic basis. That is completely automating the patches on my entire network. And at last, I need to pull up the reports for the deployment which is going on in my network. So this is the objective which we need to achieve on setting up the patch management. Now to just explore and walk you through on different features of patch management, I have taken a scenario where to better understand the patch management model in the backend. So as you see in the screen, John and his team, who is managing more than 1,000 computers in a network which is spread across different locations, different sites which contains different departments. He needs to ensure that all these machines are being patched, and once the patching is completed, he needs to send the reports to that his IT manager, who is Peter, to share what has been done and how the deployment is going on. So how John and his team can achieve the patch management setup, to show that I will take you live to the product. So I have a local setup running in my environment. So for better understanding, I'm going to log in as John in my environment. So logging as John. So this is how the product looks like for the first time guys logging in. You have all the functionality shown in the different tabs at the top. So since this is the agent server architecture product, the first and foremost thing, I need to ensure that all the machines are being added and agents are installed before going to the patch management module itself. So for that, I need to go to the admin tab, SOM settings, scope of management, and computers tab. So this is the place where I need to add the machines and install the agents. So I assume that my team have already done that. I've already done the agent installation as well as the machines which needs to be added on from different sites. And I can also create the filters and see it with the agent installation status. So that will show the list of machines which have the agent installed. As soon as agent is installed, it will perform an immediate patch scan. So I have a provision under post-deployment settings. I can configure that perform a patch scan immediately as soon as agents are installed. Even inventory scan can be performed. So these are the first task of adding the machines and pushing the agents. We also have a separate topic, coming up in a couple of weeks, where we're going to talk on more detail how the agent installation works and how to set up the scope of management. So for now, I'll assume that machines have been added and agents are installed. And now I can move into the patch management module. All right, so first and foremost thing, I need to check, I have to perform a scanning on all my network machines to find out what are the patches missing on them. So for that, I need to go to Scan Systems. I can select the machines and I can do a scan all. This is a manual scan which I am performing. We can even schedule the scanning if you want. So left hand side, Scan Systems, select all, scan all. Once that is done, then I'm going to all patches view on left hand side. And this will list out all the missing patches across my network. So this have a list of total missing patches. Now instead of going through all the missing patches, I want to somehow ensure that I'm checking only the patches which are released only last month. Only that is something which I need to test and deploy. So for that, I can create a filter in my view. I already have a predefined filter named last month release patches. I'll just edit and show you. So this has a condition like by release date is last month and platform is Windows alone. And I apply and save. So this is listing all the patches which were released for last month. Now I can very well go ahead and I can select all the patches and create a config to deploy right away to my production machines. But as a best practice or even our recommendation, we always suggest to test those patches on the lab machines first before pushing out to the production environment. Now, how to go about it, how to achieve the testing part. So for that, we have a feature called Test and Auto Approve, which is available under Settings, Approval Settings. Once you click on that, you will see there are two different options. First is automatically without testing. So then if you keep this option, once the machines scan, all the patches will be flagged as approved automatically. Or you can use Test and Approve, which is available in Enterprise Edition only. So here you have a provision where you can create different set of test groups, a pilot group machines. So for that you need to click on Add Group. And I can select, I can create different set of custom groups. So you can click on plus sign. That will take you to the page under Admin Custom Group and create new group. Admin Custom Group, create new group. And here I can name my custom group. So let's say I'll make as non-production machines pilot group. So I already have a custom group created for that name, the non-production pilot group. So that's how I can have multiple pilot groups if I want, and I can select from the list. So non-production pilot group. And then I can select what kind of updates I want, Microsoft application updates or third-party updates. And I can say like with the security updates or non-security updates or service packs or roll-ups patches, optional updates. Same way it goes to third-party patches too on different severity. So I can select all of them. And then the deployment policy which I want to use. So in deployment policy, you can set up the how or what kind of settings you want to use, like the user prompt, reboot policy, maintenance window. All these things can be controlled in deployment policy. I'm going to talk on it a bit later on in detail. And then the notification once the installation is completed and create. So I'll go back to the approval settings. So whenever the patches comes out tonight, once the machines are being scanned and deployed, I can go to the non-production pilot group and I will see the status. And what I found here, I have failed patches. I found that 2 of the patches got failed to download with the status has failed and the remarks error code. So this is the first time I've created a test lab machines test group for deployment, and due to some reason it got failed. So based on the remarks, I can figure out that this might be due to either the vendor URL was not reachable or the domains are not been accessible from the server machine. So for that, the first and foremost thing I have to check is the proxy settings, which I configured in the product. So in the settings, you go to proxy settings, and you have to ensure that you have provided proper credentials so that the server can go online and download the patches from the vendor website. So it'll ask you what kind of setup you have, whether it's a direct to internet, or you have a proxy server, or is no connection to internet at all. Even the closed network can also be managed. We have instructions for that. So let's assume that you have provided the proper credentials, the proxy server details, and after that you can go back to the approval settings and you can see the status of the job which you created. So now I have two options. If you go to patch view, you'll say there are also some patches which are not approved. So patch installation is completed, but the approval part is something which is under my control. So I can create multiple test groups. Let's assume that I have created a test group for Windows Server OS category alone, where I pointed to my test group and I've selected the Microsoft applications, and I'm concerned only about the security updates. And then if you scroll down at the bottom, I have option to automatically approve test patches. So I have unchecked this and just click on save. So in this case, what happens, it does the testing, it does the installation, and if I go inside the group, if I go in the patch view, it'll say that installation is completed but not approved. In this case, I need to manually approve the patches based on my test results. So once patches are installed, it will be in success status. Here I can select the patches and I will mark as approved. So this is where I'm doing a manual approval. That is for my server OS machines. Or other way, I can also automate the approval process too. So for that, I have another test group which is for Windows Workstation, Windows 10 OS, where I have selected both security updates as well as non-security updates and even third-party updates. So those patches have been downloaded and installed, and once they're done successfully installed, and you have an option to automatically approve test patches after 3 days. So what I've done here, I've configured the test group in such a way, it'll do the scanning, it'll do the installation once patches are downloaded and installed on client machine, and once they are successfully installed in at least one machine, after that it will wait for 3 days to check whether it will just wait in the sense like you can see if any conflict with the existing business app or any other breakup, and after 3 days those patches will be automatically moved to approved category. So you can go back to the group, approval settings, Windows 10 group, patch view, and you can see recently approved. So these have been successfully installed and they have been approved for your production machines. So that's how I can configure my different set of lab groups and test and auto approve. So I've done the scanning and I've done with my testing phase. Now if I go to all patches view under patch management, I can now filter the patches which have been successfully installed and marked as approved. So I've already created one predefined filter with approved status equal to approved and platform as Windows. So this will list out all the patches which have been tested and approved for my network, and they are good to go for my production machines. Alright, so now how to go about and deploy these patches to my production environment. So now there are two different ways. First, I will select a manual deployment approach where I can select all the patches and I can click on install patch where I'm creating a manual configuration. So I'll just name it as, let's say, Chicago deployment site or Chicago site deployment, where you have all the patches been listed. And if I want, I can even enable the scheduler settings where it's again optional. If in case there's a scenario where you want to install patches after certain days, Let's say I want to install only after 2-3 days, or let's say only on Friday or after Saturday. So I can say install after specific day. So I will say let's Friday, 10 p.m. So only after that this task will be initiated. That is optional based on requirement, you can decide. You also have provision to not to apply this configuration after specified time frame. So this can be, again, if you have a limited time window, you want to install patches only between that date, and after that, let's say the machines will not be available with you, then you can restrict the configuration time frame. It will be expired after the specified date and time. So those are optional scheduler settings. If you want, you can use. Then the deployment policy, which you want to use for this task, where you can control the reboot prompt as well as user notification and maintenance window. I'm going to talk on more detail on deployment policy shortly in a few minutes. And then comes a defined target where you can specifically select on which machine. So since I selected all the patches, I can specify what site or which site I want to deploy. So for now, since I've specified the target as Chicago site, so I can specifically select the site either New York or London. Yeah, I have also provision where I can set, if you want, you can deploy to entire domain too. So that depends on me based on the requirement. Let's say I've selected entire domain. So as soon as I select domain, and I can do you see there's an immediate alert or a notification shown to you. So if you select a domain as your base target, so you have to keep in mind that if you have multiple remote offices or multiple distribution servers, it's going to replicate all the patches to all the DS machines, which might consume a little bit of bandwidth. So only if you have a requirement to deploy all the remote office in one job, then only you select the base target as domain. Otherwise, you can specifically specify just the remote office alone. Then the retry can also be enabled. So there might be some scenarios where some patches might got failed. Let's say like Java update, because the Java process was in use in the backend. So it will reattempt on the failed machines so that you can have a higher success rate. You can set your frequencies too as per your wish. And at the bottom, you're going to see deploy and deploy immediately. So you might wonder what is the difference between these two. So as the name suggests, deploy immediately. This can be used if you want to deploy patches, if you have any kind of emergency or an urgent requirement need. Maybe you have few critical machines, let's say 5 or 10 machines, and you want to patch it right away. So in that case, you can select those machines, select the patches, and click on deploy immediately. This will invoke the agent to communicate to the server and take the task and execute right away. But if, as of now, we have restricted to max 50 computers only. If you have more than 50 computers to deploy, then we recommend to go for a deploy option. In this case, it will distribute the task to all those machines within 90 minutes using the refresh policy logic, which I just talked about a few minutes ago. So let's assume I go for a deploy option since it's a remote site deployment. And I can go to the view configuration to see what exactly happened with the task. So I have a Chicago site deployment, which shows as in progress. This is view configuration under patch management. And that is the task I clicked on, and I can see the summary. So what exactly happened with the task. So how many success, how many failed, how many yet to apply, everything will be shown to you on this page. That's the execution summary. I can also see execution status on machine level if I need. So this gives you an idea on what happened with the task which you created. If you want, I can also manually export the PDF file. This can also be used a scenario if you have, like if you want to create a replica of a same task for, let's say, only failed machines. So you deploy it to, let's say, 500 computers. And out of that, maybe few 30 to 40 machines got failed. So you can create save as new, as without target or with failed target. So you'll create a replica of the same task, and in the defined target, you're going to have those failed machines alone. So that's how we can create a replica of the existing task. So go to view configuration, Chicago site deployment. All right, so this is what I have done. You can have multiple manual tasks manual configuration, for different sites, or even different target machines. So I've successfully done the deployment on one of my site machines. Same way, likewise, my colleagues can also create the manual configuration for their respective site for the deployment. Now, what happened next when the new set of patches comes out after 2 weeks or after on next month when new patches comes out? What I'm supposed to do? Should I again create this manual configuration every time when a new patches comes out, which is definitely a time-consuming task. So I do not want to spend this much time. I somehow want to automate this complete patching process on different stages or different periodic basis across my network machines. So how to go about that? So just to recap, I've done the scanning part, I've done the local testing on my lab machines, and I went through the approval process, and I've also deployed those patches to my production machine, one of the site, using the manual configuration. Now I'm going to my next objective to automate the complete patching across my network. So to achieve that, I can use the feature called Automate Patch Deployment. If you see in top left, you have Automate Patch Deployment, where I can create multiple Automate Patch Deployment tasks based on my different sites and locations. So I will click on Schedule Task. So you have to create separate tasks for Windows OS platform, separate for Mac, and separate for Linux. So I'll go for Windows. I already have one task. I'm just going to edit that as a modify. Under Action, you have Modify Task. So you can see there are 4 different options. This is the production deployment for New York site. So first is scan the systems to identify the missing patches on the target machines. So this will just do the scanning to find out the missing patches. And if you go for second option, it will scan the machines and download those missing patches from the internet to your main desktop central server machine. Or you can go for the fourth option right away, which is actually the recommended one, where the complete patching will be automated. So you'll do the scanning, detect the patches which are missing, then download those missing patches from the internet to the main server, and then deploy to the given target machine. So the scanning, detection, download, and deployment all will be automated and done in one single task. And you have a flexibility. Again, you can decide what different type of applications and severities you want to select and to be deployed. So you want only the Microsoft applications, you have a security updates, different severity-based selection, or non-security updates. You can also include the roll-ups and optional updates which are supported, as well as third-party application updates too. So I've selected both of them, and then we have a provision where you can do staging deployment. Let's say like a delayed deployment where you want to deploy the patches which were, let's say, approved before certain days. So let's say which is approved till last 15 days ago. All the patches which have been approved before 15 days will be going ahead for deployment. And then you can select the deployment policy, which again, what kind of settings which you want to use, like the maintenance window, the reboot policy, the user prompt, all these things can be used. So you have multiple deployment policy based on your need. You can decide which specific policy you want to use for this deployment. And there's also, if you see, there's a checkbox where it allows to continue the deployment even if in some case some patches got failed to download. So let's say you're deploying more than 500 or 1,000 patches. There might be some scenarios where 1 or 2 patches may get failed to download. That might be because the vendor URL was not working or the vendor site was not reachable or down. So in those kind of scenarios, it will still continue the automate patch deployment task by skipping those failed patches. So that is a good option to have. And then the scheduler. So how frequently you want to deploy the patches. You go for a weekly basis, you can go for monthly basis. So let's say every Friday I want to start the deployment at 11 a.m. So it will initiate the job at 11 a.m. And in target I can decide which machines to deploy. So I'll go for New York remote office, or I can even select the entire domain if I want, and I can even do a sub-filter where I can control whether I want to deploy the patches on different OU or different AD groups or list of machines, set of machines. I can even create custom groups, even a dynamic custom groups or IP range or even by OS type. So I have all the flexibility of defining the target based on my requirement, or I can specifically say to a New York site alone. So that's how I can control the defined target. I can even exclude some machines if required. Let's say I've set it for entire New York site, and I want certain machines to be excluded from that deployment. I can even set that. Even that provision is there. And then retry can be enabled for the failed machines. You can also get a notifications once the task is completed, and then save the job. All right, as soon as you save the automate patch deployment task, you see the job is created. You can have multiple automate patch deployment tasks being created for different sites or different locations. So now let me tell you or show you what exactly happens once the APD task is initiated. What is the insight? What goes on in the backend? So once the job is initiated, let's say you have scheduled the task at 11 a.m. So first 90 minutes, it will scan the missing patches on the target machines. So from 11 a.m. to 12:30 noon, it's going to do the scanning. Once the scanning is completed, this is hard-coded. After that, it'll wait for patches to be downloaded from the internet, which might be approx maybe 15 minutes. Again, it might change, depends on number of missing patches. Once the patches are downloaded to the central server, then it's going to go for the deploying to the target machines. That will be within 90 minutes, as all the agents will communicate within 90 minutes. And once the deployment is completed, installation is completed, then it takes around 15 minutes to consolidate and show the results back to the server UI. So altogether it takes around maybe around 4 hours for the entire automate patch deployment task to get complete and processed. And you can go to the UI, you can go to automate patch deployment task, and you can click on the job which you created, and that will show the complete summary of the task. So what exactly happened? So this gives you a clear idea how many success, how many fail. You can go to the summary page, you get the scan details, download details, as well as the deployment status. Go to scan details to show how many machines were successfully scanned and how many failed or yet to scan. Maybe the machine was not reachable, and how many patches were downloaded and failed. And the system view, how many machines got successfully installed or still in progress, or maybe some failed too. So this gives a clear details or idea on the automate task which you created. The same way, if you want, you can even create a replica of the same task, with or without targets. So I can have multiple automate patch deployment tasks scheduled for different sites, and this will keep on going on the periodic basis, the weekly basis or monthly basis, however I have configured. So this is how I can automate the patching process across my network. All right, so that brings the end of the fourth objective too, of setting up or automating the patches on my network machines. Now, next question comes in my mind is, the patches are going on as they're running absolutely fine in every week or monthly basis, but I don't have a visibility, like what's going on, how the network is standing out on the patching level. So I want some better alerts or reports so that I can get better idea, as well as I can share those reports to my management. So first and foremost thing, whenever you create an automate patch deployment task, there's the option to set the notification settings, where I can configure the frequency. So what it does, you can set for multiple times, and it will show the alerts in every 2 hours, every 3 hours, based on the time frame. So in every 3 hours, whatever machines got successfully installed or failed, you will get an email alert that will give you a live data on the task which you created. So that's the one way of getting the alerts or status on the APD tasks which have been created. Second one is, you go to all systems view, and you can see the health status of your network. So you can see there are some machines which are flagged under highly vulnerable category. This is under all systems view, left hand side. Highly vulnerable, healthy machines and managed systems. So if you go to managed systems, there will be a column called health where the machines are flagged in different categories. Now you might wonder how these machines are being categorized in different health status systems. So that is done based on the system health policy which you configured. So in top right, if you see there's a system health policy settings. If you click on it, that will show like the numbers. So if any one or more of critical important patch is missing, flag that machine under highly vulnerable category. Same way, if any one or more moderate or low rated patches are missing, flag it under vulnerable. Or consider only the approved patches in the system health policy report and exclude all the third-party patches. Since you don't care about third-party, you want only Microsoft updates to be considered. So you can make even the changes on the numbers. So based on the settings you configure here, we will calculate and generate the report. So if you go to Manage Systems view, all the machines will be triggered and shown respective system health policy categories. You can even export the data into PDF or CSV, XLS. This is a manual export. So that's how I can get the health status report from the product console. Now next is, this is something I can pull up manually, but I want this report to be shared to my management so that I can have a better visibility and it should run automatically. So for that I can schedule the reports. You see at bottom left you have a schedule reports. So if you go to reports tab, you can even access from here schedule reports. So I'll just edit one of them. So here if you see reports category or patch reports, and I can select what are the patch which reports I want. So I can go to all managed systems, I can edit, and you have a permission to select based on health status, criteria equal to, and all the different categories. Same way I can also include other reports like install patches for this month or latest patches release. So based on my requirement, I can select whatever reports I want, then whatever attachment format I need, whether in a PDF file or XLS or a CSV file. And then I can decide whether I want to send it as an attachment or to send as a zip file. And if it's above, let's say 10 MB, you can also publish that as a send as a URL too. So you have all the options out here. I can set to whom you want to send, to you and Peter, my manager, and the subject and the content, and the schedule. So how frequently you want to send the report. So every month on 4th Monday, 10 a.m., I want this report to be triggered to everyone, to my IT department as well as to my management. So automatically the reports will be sent out. So that's how I can completely automate the patching as well as send the reports to my management. All right, that brings to the end of the setup of the patch management. So now I'll move to the next topic where if you have any questions so far, feel free to put in the chat. The next topic is deployment of the patches during non-working hours. So this is something I would say a scenario which I've taken to explain. Let's say it's a 0-day patches which have been released by Microsoft next week, or they are planning to release, and you have a requirement to patch them immediately within 24 hours to some critical machines in one of your finance department. But you have a very limited time window on it. You want to deploy the patches between 6 to 9 p.m. and you want to wake up the machines if they are turned off, as well as you want to force the reboot once the patches are rebooted. Once the patches are installed, you want to reboot the machine, excluding the server OS. So how to achieve this specific scenario using the DesktopCentral patching? Yes, this can be done. So to achieve that, you need to configure or make use of the deployment policy. So on the patch management left-hand side, you have a deployment policy. You need to create a new policy, and here you can control the different settings. So first and foremost thing, the condition of installing the patch between 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So only patches will be installed between these 3 hours time frame. Next is turn on the computers before deployment. So we do have Wake on LAN tool integrated within the product. So it will turn on the machines if they are turned off and then go ahead with deployment. And the third one was force reboot. Yes, you have a reboot policy. You can enable the force reboot and you can give some time, let's say 5 minutes. If someone is working, he gets the time to save his data. So that's how I can achieve all these 3 conditions. Apart from that, there are a lot of other options too, like you can even exclude the servers from reboot. For that, you need to check this box. So server OS will be excluded if in case they are in targets. You can also set the postpone reboot. In this case, you are allowing the end user to postpone the reboot. You can even have the same conditions once patches are installed. You want to shut down the machines, or you can go for do not reboot and create a separate task to reboot later on. You have a lot of other options too, like you can even set the user notifications if you want. So if suppose you're pushing out during production hours, you can very well customize the message, the user prompt. You can show the progress notification, like they get a system tray icon with the progress notification. You can even allow the user to skip the deploy. So if they are working during the production hours, if they want, they can skip the deployment too. And there are options like you also decide if you want to deploy a preferred week of the month. So let's say you want to deploy only the 2nd and 4th week of the month, or even preferred day of the week. Let's say you want to decide to push out only on weekends, Saturday and Sunday alone. So even that can be controlled. And we also have a feature where you can even stage the patching. So if you see the option called download patches and software during the subsequent refresh cycle. So in this case, what happens by enabling this option, the download of the patches will occur immediately during the subsequent refresh cycle once the patch scan and download is completed. So in this case, let's say you have a window is very short, like 6 p.m., right? So you can create the APD task maybe at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. itself. And what happens during the daytime, the scanning will be done, the patches will be downloaded to the client machine right away, and they will be kept ready for installation as soon as the deployment window kicks in. So in the back end, you are downloading the patches and keeping ready to the client machine itself and install the patches as soon as the deployment window kicks in. Otherwise, it will wait for the next 90 minutes refresh cycle to initiate the deployment. So this can be very handy when you have a short maintenance window to install. So you have all the flexibility based on the requirement. You can decide the deployment policy which you want to use for the rollout. And if in case I want to just show the prompt, so if you allow the user to skip the reboot, this is how the prompt will look like. I know they will have option to just set the reminder next 15 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours or restart immediately or later. And if you enable the force reboot, this is how the prompt will look like on the end user machine. So they get a pop-up on the system tray and they'll have a countdown, whatever time you have set for the force reboot. All right, that brings to the end of the